Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about analyzing salary cap trades part 2. If you haven't had a chance yet, go ahead and check our previous episode where we had part 1 and we went through 9 trades, and we got another 9 in this episode. All right, Joe, so let's talk about the first trade. We got a 16-team dynasty IDP PPR. We've got a 2025 first for the 114. Harrison Bowers, Caleb Williams, Daniels, and Keon Coleman and Neighbors are gone. So would you trade your 2025 first in order to get the 114?
I'm not so sure I would do that, but I think partially it'd be interesting to know like if this team is, like a contending team to the point where their future first might be at the end of the first round as well, where maybe in that case it would be, but if there's a chance that, he's, it's a rebuilding team and maybe that future first is a high first, just in the event that his next year first could be better, I might just hold on to it. And I just don't know if it's worth trading a future first to get in towards the end of the first round there.
Well, it sounds like based on what we have in the notes that it would be a mid to late first in
Okay.
2025. So I would lean towards no. I would say I'm the type of person who likes to have a pick in every draft, especially in the first round. I think not having a first round, unless you're getting a huge caliber player, and especially I would do that for a veteran. I wouldn't do it for a rookie. I don't think. I think you're taking too much of a gamble, and not to have an opportunity in the first round. Although I think this is I think at the end of the day, I think this is a deep class. I think of the years I have evaluated the draft classes, I think this might be the deepest one or the most first round grades that I've had over the past few years. But even with that being the case, I don't like the idea of trading another first, especially for a guy at the 114, which I don't know how much impact they're really going to have.
And I think you make it a good point. Like I don't have a problem with trading picks for proven commodities. And, being that he's expecting mid to, the future to be mid to late, I'm assuming he's a contending team. I'd rather if I'm going to trade my 2025 first round pick, I'd rather trade it on, like you said, a veteran player that's going to help me win now and already a proven player. So I don't think it's worth it to go ahead and move it for the end of the first round and take it on a rookie who not sure if he's going to pan out or not.
All right, Joe. So let's look at this humdinger of a trade right here. This is a mammoth. Get your thoughts on this. So on the one side, we've got defensive end Nick Bosa on a 5-year, $140.5 million contract. Wide receiver DJ Moore, 2 years, $34 million, a 2024 second, and a 2024 fourth. In return, the other owner received wide receiver Calvin Ridley, 2 years, $26 million. Wide receiver Darnell Mooney, 1 year, $4 million. Wide receiver Elijah Moore, 1 year, $3.5 million. Tight end Trey McBride, 2 years, $3.5 million. Trayvon Walker, defensive end, 2 years plus a 5th-year option, $7 million. And lastly, Jalen Phillips on a 1 year, $3.5 million contract. This is a mammoth, Joe. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, definitely was a mammoth, and definitely was a pretty shocking trade when it happened in our league here. But I honestly like the Nick Bosa and DJ Moore side personally. I know Nick Bosa is a decent amount of money, but top tier defensive end in IDP leagues. DJ Moore, get him on a 2-year deal. He's been really good in Chicago. I know there's a quarterback change, but if Caleb Williams is worth all the hype, he should be just fine there in Chicago. And then not only get those players, but to get the a second and a fourth round pick in this year's draft as well. I know he gave up a decent amount of wide receivers, but I feel like the best possession that the other team is getting is Trey McBride at tight end, especially since we play in a tight end premium league.
Yeah, I think for me, what tips the scales to go on towards the Bosa side is the draft picks.
Yeah.
I think the draft picks were sort of unnecessary as a part of this trade. I think if it was Bosa and Moore for those other players, I wouldn't have been bothered by it. I think Moore and Mooney, I think you and I feel similarly. Those guys are just extras. I don't think that – I think both of them are over the hill.
Right.
Not as far as an age standpoint, just from a production standpoint, I just don't see it. So
I
let's
think
just.
Mooney's more interesting than Elijah Moore personally.
But I don't think either of them are that relevant.
Mooney could be more relevant.
Okay, so you
With,
give him a
with
little more stock than
with
I do.
Atlanta, I put a little more stock in Mooney, but I agree with Elijah Moore. I was high on him last year, then disappointed. They add Jerry Jeudy to the mix there, so I really don't like him this year.
Then you got the Ridley and McBride piece, which I would say those two are better than Moore. So you could say that's better. But then you've got Walker and Phillips for Bosa. That's a really interesting dynamic because if again, and let's say Phillips isn't have a torn Achilles, that could change things as well.
Yeah.
Because I do think, although Nick Bosa is a name, I could see. I have no way to support this, but this I feel like based on what I heard from the broadcast when I watched him, I could see his play falling off in a few years. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I mean, you saw even his brother Joey Bosa come on the scene. He kind of fizzled after a while. So I I don't know. I'm not that like I'd rather have guys like Max Crosby or even like a Micah Parsons and stuff like that instead of a guy like Nick Bosa. But I do lean towards the Bosa side.
Yeah. I think I don't know if Nick Bosa will fall off. I feel like he's got a better work ethic and just a different player than his brother Joey. But the thing of it is 49ers have so many guys on the defensive line. I feel like that should help them and make things easy on them. But yeah, I think we both agree, with the Nick Bosa side. And like you said, those extra picks really put everything over the top.
Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, show your support to our channel by following us on Apple and Spotify under the Salary Cap Show and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Front Office Pros. If you want advice on your trades, head over to the Front Office Pros Twitter and fill out our Front Office Pros Dynasty Trade Inquiry Form, which gives us all the information we need to help advise you on what is the best move for your team. So in our next trade, Joe, we've got Tank Dell or Keon Coleman plus a 2024 third and a 16-team Dynasty IDP PPR.
This is interesting. I think I might. I think I'd probably go with the Keon Coleman plus a 2024
Wow,
third
I did
round.
not expect you to say that.
Yeah,
That shocks me.
The thing I know, thing of it is just the sample size out of Tank Dell. Like he had a really good year while he was in there. Injury cut his season short, but while he was on the field, he was very impressive. But Keon Coleman, the in the Bills offense, they really don't have. They have a lot of guys at the wide receiver position, but nobody really that stands out. So if Keon Coleman could come in and really establish himself as the one in that offense, could pay dividends. And then, we understand, this is a deep draft class. We, offensive players, and then even IDP. There are some names that you might be able to get in that range. So I think getting Keon Coleman and the third, I think I'd take that side.
I'm surprised you say that. I agree with you. I'm going to take the Coleman side. And I will admit, Joe, when I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And yes, I think because of him being a Bills player, I feel like I've had to take a closer look at Keon Coleman. But I think that I made an error in judgment as far as my evaluation on Coleman. I am still worried about his separation. However, I think I allowed maybe the narrative that was said about him kind of form my opinion because he is very athletic. He has fantastic hands. He has been able to show great top speed and yard after catch. So, and he seems like a great culture fit, to be honest with you. I mean, he's a complete change to what like a Stephon Diggs who would cause drama for the sake of drama. Where this guy, he's just having a good time and seems like he's the darling of rookies right now because everybody in the media wants to cover him because they think he's funny or whatever. But
yeah,
so
Macy's jackets and anything on wheels. No snowmobiles though.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. See, there you go. You're eating into what's going on out there. So What?
Well, I was just saying, oh yeah, I'm eating into it for sure.
Oh yeah, you are. So to me, I would lean on the Coleman side too. Tank Dell's interesting, but let's not overreact based on a rookie here.
That's the thing, he had a great season, but I don't think that's I think if you could take advantage of that with the Coleman in the third, I'd go ahead and do that.
So Joe, you were saying you like Darnell Mooney, so I'm going to put you to the test here. So in a 16-team dynasty IDP PPR, 110 million in cap space here, what kind of draft pick would you want in order to trade Darnell Mooney with a contract of 547,000?
Well, I mean, despite me being high on Mooney, I shouldn't say high on Mooney either. Like, I think he's interesting. I think he could, um, I think Atlanta could unlock something with him and get him back to what we've seen him be able to do, that 1,000-yard season that he had with Justin Fields, getting Kirk Cousins. I think he can do well, but I think it'd be hard to get anything more than probably a third round pick for him, just
You
because
would trade a third for him? I wouldn't do that. I think so I'm trying to think about it from our league's context, and there's 7 rounds. I wouldn't trade. A fourth would be my top, in my view.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I think somewhere between the third and the fourth. I mean, I don't think a third is crazy. I mean, the the guy is on a dirt cheap contract as well. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
on
for
five hundred
basically 45
forty-seven
million.
thousand is nothing.
No, it's not. But I thought I'd put you to the test because you said you like Darnell Mooney, so I wanted to put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I think. I mean, I do think he's interesting. Um, get him out of that bad Chicago offense that was just really dominated with DJ Moore, and give him Kirk Cousins, who likes to throw the ball around and can throw it deep to him. So
So let's go to the next trade here. We've got defensive end George Karlaftis. It's a 16-team dynasty IDP PPR, 110 million cap space. His salary in 2024 is 1.2 million. In 2025, the salary is going to be around 4 million. Was offered the 2.7 for George Karlaftis. Do you feel like that's a fair value?
So I tend to agree. I think a second round value for Karloftis probably is a little high. I'd be more comfortable, going with a third round pick personally. I think
You really
that's
think so? I don't think it's that bad. I mean, if you were to draft it, where would Karlaftis slot in the edges that are currently in this class?
well, you're talking about a class that's not very good at edge.
That's what I'm saying. So I mean, the two, if you need an edge in the 2.7, I mean, Karlaftis has done pretty well in his career. I mean, he's not been unbelievable by any means, but he's been solid for the Chiefs. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, he has been solid. I'm just looking. I mean, he had uh 6 sacks his rookie year, 10.5 last year. So I mean, that is a pretty nice jump that you like to see. Um, yeah, I mean, in our league, he was averaging 15 points a game last year. So I mean, he is interesting, and I think we've seen can take some years for these defensive players to really turn into their own. But he also goes up in price, jumps up to the 4 million
Yeah, but
in
that's not that much.
2025 as well.
It
So
sounds like you're flip flopping here. Are you saying that you can't straddle the
no,
fence?
I would still I would feel more comfortable with the third rounder than the second round.
I'd
I'm
be
not flip
okay with the
flopping on
second
that.
rounder. I'm
Right.
okay with the second rounder. I think he's a good value. It could depend on your defensive scoring and how he does and how he compares to offensive players. I think that is something to be mindful of, and that could change my thought process. In our league, though, in the way we score defense, he's a second round pick value all day long.
Yeah, that is true. We don't know how their IDP works. If you don't play in like a big play scoring where it rewards more points for the sacks, he doesn't really get that many tackles.
No.
So probably would be disappointed if you're not playing in a league where you get the bonus points for sacks.
All right. So in the next trade, uh, the offer was Brandon Stevens and the 4.11 for Byron Young. So what do you think about that trade? It's purely an IDP trade in this one.
That is interesting.
I'm taking Byron Young. I
I
mean,
s-
Stevens is like a converted corner, safety. I just, they drafted Nate Wiggins for Baltimore in the first round. Just wonder what role he's really going to have, and did he excel because of Mike McDonald no longer now there? So I would much rather have Byron Young. He's a promising young, previous rookie player for the Rams. Really came on the scene last year. Now you got Jared Verse and Braden Fisk in there on top of it. I actually think that the person who's getting Byron Young is getting a steal, in my view, in this trade.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say I lean the Byron Young way as well. At the end of the day, it's just hard to really value cornerbacks. And a lot of that depends on your scoring as well. So I think especially if you're in the type of scoring like us where the sack numbers, then just there's far more potential in a guy like Byron Young that he could bring to you than a cornerback probably would. The upside is much higher of an edge rusher.
All right, Joe. Putting you right on the hot seat here. You had a trade. You
Alrighty.
received the 2024 third round pick and a 2024 fourth round pick. In exchange, you traded away Stephon Diggs on a 1-year, $9 million contract. Deontay Johnson, 2 years, $71 million. Yes, I repeat, $71 million. And then Jake Ferguson on essentially a 2-year deal for a $500,000. So, Joe, looking back on this, is it still looking as favorable, or are you having your doubts?
On paper, it's not going to look favorable, and it really wasn't a favorable trade. But at the end of the day, I was going to all these owners in our league trying to get a second round pick for Stephon Diggs. Just wasn't happening. I also started this offseason over $100 million over our cap, had to clear a lot. So a lot of this had to just be done in order to clear space for me. And now I'm on the plus side of the salary cap, so I can participate in our free agency period coming up a bit and use that to build out the rest of my roster. So yeah, it looks like a bad trade on paper. Probably doesn't make a lot of sense to people, but if you would have seen the impact that it had on my salary cap and how much cap space it freed up, and the team that I traded in Deontay Johnson to and Diggs, they had a boatload of cap space available, so they could really take on that contract for me. So from that standpoint, it makes sense. But if you're looking at it solely on paper, I mean, looking at those receivers and Jake Ferguson, a young tight end that's got a 1-year deal, you're thinking, what am I doing? A third and a fourth round pick for those guys?
Well, I think that's where, and I would encourage those, who are, enjoying this episode, that you should really consider salary cap leagues, because in a dynasty league, people would think you're off your rocker, if you did this type of move. But it's a different story. It's a different story. Like you said, you're in cap jail. You had to get out, and Deontay Johnson, even though whatever you think about him, the reality is there was only a few teams that could actually inherit that contract. So his value is is tied to the contract in this situation. So obviously, I think at the end of the day, it carried forward what each owner desired or needed. But on paper, I mean, it looks like you got fleeced.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah, people are gonna probably comment here and just tell me I'm nuts, but which is fine. But at the end of the day, Diggs did nothing for my team. I'm trying to rebuild. He had 1 year left on his deal for $9 million. So he makes sense for a contending team and a win now team, and that didn't make sense for me. And I feel like once he got traded to the Texans, his value plummeted in our league, and I tried to go to everyone trying to get a second round pick and just could not.
Well, I think the other piece of it too was I think owners looked at his 1-year deal as very unfavorable. If he had multiple years on the contract, I think they might have felt differently based on that. But it was basically a 1-year rental, and then am I going to re-sign this player or not? And that I think that could change. That probably caused ill feelings towards the trade.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, basically the Texans, he's on a 1-year deal in real life with the Texans. So after this season, he's going to be a free agent in real life. And then that probably made people nervous, just not knowing where he's going to go after that too.
Oh, absolutely. All right, Joe. So for a 16-team Dynasty IDP PPR, The 1.7 was made available in this person's league. Does it make sense to offer Tank Dell for the pick? So, would you trade Tank Dell for the 1.7?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would take Dell for the 1.7, but I don't know if the person with the 1.7 would take Tank Dell. Um, he mentioned a lot of interesting names that potentially would be on the clock at the 1.7. Um, so I don't. Yeah, sure, I would like to trade Tank Dell for the 1.7. I just don't know if that's realistic for the person that's holding that 1.7.
I think the one thing to consider is Tank Dell's contract in this situation is 575,000, which is a smoking deal. So I mean,
Yeah,
if this guy continues to perform, you are doing very well. Now in a 1.7, you're probably getting a rookie contract. It's probably a little bit higher, but I think it'd be worth the risk, to be able to take the 1.7. I mean, would you rather have a guy like Bowers or would you rather have a Tank Dell? It's tough. I feel like you're kind of splitting hairs, but I would say that I am concerned that he's going to be consistent the rest of the way. The reality is, receivers of his body type have not succeeded in the NFL over the past decades. It's just recently that we've seen a player of his caliber. We've seen kind of a changing of the guard. And I've had to
right.
adjust because I basically was like, I'm not drafting this guy. This guy's basically my height and weight. I'm like, there's no way he's gonna do well, and he proved me wrong. So I think you're starting to see the NFL be a little bit different, even with some of these running backs too that are kind of smaller as well. So I think you have to take that into consideration.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's interesting for him to trade Tank Dell just because, I mean, the guy's wide receivers. I mean, he's got a lot of them. And he's, few of them, Darnell Mooney, as we've talked about before, Dontavian Wicks, they're also not too expensive as well. So, be interesting to see what he ends up doing there.
All right, Joe. So our final trade is gonna be, and this is not as exciting of a final trade. I probably should have waited for another one, but uh, the trade is Ty Chandler for Tank Bigsby. So would you trade away a handcuff for a handcuff? Basically, this owner in particular has ETN. So would you go ahead and have security blanket and get Tank? But you're trading Ty Chandler. I know you're a Ty Chandler guy, so I'm curious to see how you land on this.
I would just simply rather have Ty Chandler. I think having handcuffs are overrated. Um,
Wow, I was not expecting this answer from you. Very
Yeah,
interesting.
I think getting handcuffs are overrated because in reality, you would be holding Tank Bixby on your roster solely for the chance that ETN goes down, and Bixby's probably pretty irrelevant unless an injury happens to Travis Etienne, where you know Ty Chandler still might get mixed in there with Aaron Jones. Um, I think I'd rather just I just don't believe in the strategy of having a handcuff on the same team. And I don't think that's very important when you could easily just have another running back on another team who could be, more fantasy relevant for you and maybe even faster.
I don't know. I think that's kind of a hot take, though. I mean, Kyron Williams was a handcuff. I mean, think about the player that people thought Cam Akers, but a year from back during July and August time frame, people were like, "Oh, Cam Akers is going to come back. Cam Akers is going to be really great." I had my doubts. I thought it was going to be Zach Evans. When I was wrong, it was ended up being Kyron Williams. Was not anticipating that, but Kyron Williams was effectively the handcuff there. And if you had him, could have allowed you to win your league.
Sure. I just don't think Tank Bigsby is going to be that type of guy. He doesn't really excite
Interesting.
me. Ty Chandler, to me, is the better back. And when
Wow, you're biased. You're a big Ty Chandler guy.
how am I biased? Just look at the production. I mean,
Yeah.
if Bigsby was better, he'd get more opportunities. Uh, who Dearness Johnson was getting more opportunities than Tank Bigsby. What does that tell you?
Yeah, but I mean, you're hearing the coaching staff more and more saying they want to get this guy involved. I would lean the Bigsby side. To me,
Mm,
ETN has not been able to stay healthy. I don't feel the way that you do about when it comes to handcuffs. I'm not huge into it, but I do think there's value in it because injuries at the running back position happen all the time. So if you are relying on ETN and he goes down and you don't have anything else in return, you're in trouble.
Yeah, but I think that's what I mean. I think you can also look elsewhere for fill-ins where even if Tank Bigsby is the starter for the Jaguars, I don't know how much fantasy is he going to really produce for you. He also was showing as a rookie he couldn't hang on to the ball, and if you can't hang on to the ball in the NFL, you're simply just not going to get playing time. Yeah, hang on to Ty Chandler. Don't be trading him away for ETN.
I would be trading for
Tank Bigsby rather.
yeah. I would tell you to trade for Tank Bigsby personally. So, but hopefully, at least the discourse, you hear my side versus Joe's side. So at least the discourse can help you maybe say, yeah, I like Joe's points better, or I like Steve's points better, and hopefully it helps make your decision. At the end of the day,
I like for once we're disagreeing on something that I feel like we kind of agreed on the same sides of a lot of these trades, but finally got a disagreement. I like it.
That's right. Well, I definitely disagree with you on this. I mean, I had Bigsby. I took him in the dynasty. I thought that Bigsby had a lot of value. Mind you, it seemed as though they drafted him pretty high draft capital, and I didn't think that I didn't think that he'd be involved as he was, but that was a big mistake.
Yeah, you're not alone, and that was part of the overreaction that the fantasy footballer said. Be careful with.
Oh no, I know. I heard what they had to say, and they weren't necessarily wrong because what happened last year did not go well. Tank.
Right.
So that does it for our Analyzing Salary Cap Trades Part 2. If you enjoyed this trades episode, we encourage you to go over to our Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it these days. Go over to Front Office Pros. We have a form. It's called the Front Office Pros Dynasty Trade Inquiry Form. It gives you, if you take a few minutes to fill it out, we ask certain questions that help inform us so that we can best advise you as to what we would recommend as far as your trade, whether you should accept it, decline it, maybe you make a counter, and what you could do. Otherwise, you're always welcome to reach out to us on X to be able to provide different trades. We're happy to discuss those as well. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.